was the cold. That was the first thing she felt every morning when she opened her eyes in the darkness of the cellar. A cold that seeped through her thin, tattered nightgown, through her skin, her muscle, right down to her very bones. Magdalena Smith lay curled in a ball on the mattress, which had long ceased to be a mattress. It was now just a heap of damp sponge, full of mold and the stench of decay. Her 78-year-old body shook uncontrollably, and her lips, chapped and blue, moved silently in the prayer she had repeated for 3 years. God, take me out of here, or take me to yourself, please. There were no windows in this place, no light from the outside. The only source of illumination was a small bulb on the ceiling that only came on when he arrived. And when he came, Magdalena preferred the darkness, because the light meant it was time for another session of humiliation, another dose of pain, another reminder that no one was looking for her, no one remembered. No one would ever come. The sound of footsteps on the stairs, heavy, confident steps of men's boots on the wooden treads. Magdalena's heart began to beat faster, and the familiar wave of nausea rose in her stomach. Instinctively, she covered her head with her hands, as if the gesture could protect her. Her left forearm, badly mended after a break a year ago, throbbed with every movement. Christopher had never taken her to a doctor. He had simply let the bone set crookedly on its own, forming a grotesque angle that kept her from straightening her arm. The key turned in the lock. The door opened with a terrifying screech that echoed in the empty room. Light flared, sharp and merciless, wounding eyes accustomed to the gloom. Magdalena shrank even further. "Well, good morning, Mommy." Christopher's voice was sweet, almost affectionate, but Magdalena knew this game. She knew every tone of his voice. This velvety, falsely tender tone always preceded something terrible. "How are you feeling today? Did you sleep well in your little kingdom?" She did not answer. She had learned that silence was sometimes safer, but not this time. "I asked if you slept well," he suddenly shouted, and his hand grabbed her hair, yanking her head back. Magdalena groaned in pain, but she did not scream. She had stopped screaming months ago when she realized no one heard, no one was coming. The screaming only gave him pleasure. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice hoarse from disuse. "I'm sorry, Christopher. I slept well. Thank you." He let go of her hair and stepped back, looking at her with a mixture of contempt and satisfaction. He was 45, her only child, the boy she had borne in pain, the one she had breastfed, the one she had taught to walk, to talk, to read, the boy who was now her tormentor. "I have something special for you today," he said, pulling a folded piece of paper from his pocket. "A document, a very simple document. Just your signature and everything. We'll be over. I promise." Magdalena knew what the document was. It was the same thing he brought every week for 2 years. A notarized deed transferring ownership of the tenement building, her tenement building, a wedding gift from her parents, a home that had survived the war, communism, all the storms of her life, to his name, for a pittance. The transferor's statement section stated that she was doing this of her own free will, in full possession of her mental faculties. "No," she said, quietly. The word cost her all the strength she had. Christopher's face hardened. "What did you say?" "I can't. It's my family's house. For your children. For the grandchildren." The laugh that burst from his throat was devoid of warmth. "My children. Mommy, my children don't want an old rotting building. They want money, real money, and I need that money now." He moved closer to her, squatting beside the mattress. The scent of his cologne, expensive, designer, mingled with the smell of tobacco and alcohol. He reached out and gently, almost tenderly, stroked her cheek. Magdalena trembled. "You know what will happen if you refuse again," he whispered, and his fingers slid onto her shoulder. Where there was skin, there was now a mosaic of scars. Round, uniform marks from cigarette burns, some old, white and smooth, others fresh, red, still bloody. "Please," Magdalena whimpered. "Please, not again." "Then sign it." "I can't. God is my witness. I want to, but I can't. This is all that's left of my parents, of your father." Christopher sighed dramatically, as if disappointed with the disobedient child. He straightened up and reached into his pocket. He took out a pack of cigarettes, pulled one out, and lit it. He took a deep drag, and then looked at the glowing end of the cigarette with a strange, absent look on his face. "You know, Mommy, sometimes I think you are the most stubborn woman in the world." Then, without warning, he pressed the cigarette to her arm. The pain was so intense that for a moment Magdalena couldn't breathe. Her body arched, her mouth opened in a silent scream, and the smell of burning flesh, her own flesh, hit her nose. When he pulled the cigarette away, he left another round, black mark on her skin. "Think about it," he said, getting up. "You have until tomorrow. Either you sign, or—" He trailed off, shrugging. "Or we'll see how long an old woman can last without food. It's already the second day, isn't it?" Magdalena did not answer. She lay there, clutching her burned arm, feeling the pain pulsate in rhythm with her heartbeat. She heard him leave, heard him close the door, heard him turn the key. She heard the footsteps receding up the stairs, and then silence. Silence always returned. In the darkness, Magdalena wept. She wept softly, tears running down her cheeks and dripping onto the dirty mattress. She wasn't crying from the physical pain. She had grown used to that. She was crying from despair, from a sense of helplessness, from the question that returned every day. Why? Why had her own child, whom she had carried under her heart, whom she had loved unconditionally, turned her life into hell? She remembered Christopher as a little boy. He was 6 when he broke his arm falling from a tree. He cried in her arms all the way to the hospital. Back then, he was her world, her beloved little son. Where had that boy gone? When had he turned into a monster? Gambling, cocaine, debt. It all started 10 years ago when her husband died. Christopher began borrowing money, small amounts at first, then larger and larger ones. He sold his house, his car, his wife's jewelry, and then he came for her. "Mom, I need your help. It's just a loan. I'll pay it back." She gave him money. Once, twice, 3 times, until she had nothing left but the tenement building. And that's when the pressure began. "Sell it. It's an old building. You don't need it." When she refused, everything changed. First came the subtle suggestions to the neighbors. "My mother is getting old. She forgets things. She left the gas on yesterday." Neighbors began to look at her differently, with pity, with apprehension. They stopped inviting her to gatherings. They stopped answering her calls. Then came the medical examination. Christopher took her to the family doctor, a young, overworked man who prescribed her blood pressure pills without even listening to her complaints about bone pain. "Doctor," Christopher recorded on his phone, "Mom mixes updates. Yesterday she forgot the name of the street she lives on. It was a lie. She never forgot anything." But the doctor, tired and stressed, wrote in her file, "Patient shows symptoms of possible dementia. Observation recommended." That note was all he needed. On a February night 3 years ago, Christopher said he was taking her to a safe place. When she saw the cellar, she tried to run. But he was stronger. He locked her in and said, "This is for your own good. You're sick. You might hurt yourself." 1,092 days had passed since that night. She knew because she had scratched marks on the wall with her fingernails. 1,092 days of darkness. 1,092 days of hunger, cold, and pain. 1,092 days in which the world had forgotten her, and now she lay on the mattress, clutching her burned arm, and prayed for one thing: "God, if you can't save me, then kill me. Please." She didn't know her prayer would be answered, but not in the way she expected. A few hours later, perhaps a day later, Magdalena had stopped distinguishing time. The door opened again. This time the light was even sharper, and the footsteps were faster, more nervous. Christopher entered, and behind him, Beatrice, his wife. Magdalena shuddered. When Beatrice came, it was always worse. "Well, dear mother-in-law," Beatrice said in a sweet voice dripping with venom, "I hear you were naughty again. Christopher says you don't want to sign the papers. That's bad, very bad." Beatrice was a pretty woman. She was 40, with blonde hair and perfect makeup. Outside, at social gatherings, she played the role of the caring daughter-in-law. "Yes, we're taking care of Christopher's mother. Poor thing, she has dementia. It's so sad." But here in the cellar where no one could see, Beatrice was perhaps even crueler than her husband. She pulled cigarettes from her purse, the same brand Christopher used. She lit one and took a drag, looking at Magdalena with strange curiosity, as if observing an exotic animal at the zoo. "You know what fascinates me about you?" she asked, crouching next to the mattress. "That you still resist, after 3 years. Most people would have broken down by now. They would have signed everything. But you're stubborn as a mule." "Please," Magdalena whispered. "Please, leave me alone." "Leave you alone?" Beatrice laughed. "Darling, you're the one keeping us all in this hell. If you would just sign those papers, you could leave here. You could live normally, but no, you have to be a hero." She pressed the cigarette to Magdalena's other arm. This time, Magdalena screamed, a terrifying, tearing shriek that echoed in the cellar but went no further. Beatrice smiled. "That's better. I love it when you scream. It reminds me that you're still here, still feeling." Christopher stood in the doorway, watching the scene without emotion. He didn't stop his wife. He didn't say, "Enough." He just watched, as if observing a boring movie. Beatrice straightened up, brushing off her skirt. "We have a surprise for you. Christopher has decided it's time for a final solution. If you don't sign the documents by tomorrow, well, they'll take you out of here, but not home, to the woods. We'll leave you where no one will find you, and you know what? We'll tell the police you ran away, that your dementia got worse and you just walked out in the night. They'll look for you, of course, but they'll never find you, because you'll be dead, from hypothermia or from starvation. Depends on what comes first." Magdalena closed her eyes. This was the end. She knew it. There was no escape. She could sign and lose everything her family had worked for generations, or she could refuse and die. Truly, which option was better? "Think about it," Christopher said, speaking for the first time. "Until tomorrow, last chance." They left, abandoning her in the darkness. This time Magdalena did not cry. She was too tired, too exhausted. She just lay there, staring at the invisible ceiling, feeling the pain in her arms pulsate with her heartbeat, and waited. She waited for death. The night was particularly cruel. The temperature in the cellar dropped below freezing. It was February, one of the coldest months in the history of the city. Magdalena trembled so hard she couldn't stop. Her teeth chattered and her body curled in on itself, trying to preserve warmth that wasn't there. Her nightgown, the only clothing she had, was so thin she might as well have been naked. Somewhere in the middle of the night, she stopped feeling her toes, then her feet, then her hands. Her body was giving up, organ by organ, cell by cell. This was the end, she thought. This is how she was dying. In the darkness, in the cold, in solitude. But first she had to do something. She had to leave a trace. She lifted herself from the mattress. Every movement was agony. Every inch of travel required heroism, and crawled to the wall. With her fingers, with her broken nails, she began to scratch the concrete. She had no pen, no pencil. She only had her body, so she used it. She wrote slowly, every letter a battle. She wrote her name, Magdalena Smith. She wrote her address, 45 Marshall Avenue. She wrote the date, February 14th, 2025, and she wrote the last words she wanted someone, anyone, to ever read. My son Christopher Smith imprisoned me here for 3 years. This is not dementia. This is torture. If you find this, please tell the truth. When she finished, she no longer had the strength to return to the mattress. She simply collapsed onto the floor, next to the writing on the wall. She closed her eyes and waited. At some point, she heard footsteps. Christopher was coming back, but this time he didn't open the door right away. First, she heard voices, his and Beatrice's, arguing about something. We can't leave her here, Beatrice hissed. If she dies here, there will be questions, an autopsy, an investigation. So what? Do you suggest? Christopher replied, annoyed. I'll take her out tonight. We'll leave her far away somewhere. Let her look like a homeless person. Let someone find the body and think she died of hypothermia. Silence. Then, fine, do it. The door opened. The light hit Magdalena's eyes, but she had no strength to shield them. Christopher entered, looked at her lying on the floor and grimaced. God, she already looks like a corpse. All the better, Beatrice said. Help me carry her. They lifted her. Magdalena was so light that she probably weighed no more than 88 pounds. Her bones protruded through her skin. Her whole body was one big wound. She did not protest as they carried her up the stairs. She did not protest when they loaded her into the back seat of the car. She did not protest when Christopher started driving through the nighttime city. At some point she asked, "Where are you taking me?" "To hell," Beatrice replied, without turning her head. They drove for an hour, maybe 2. Magdalena lost track of time. Finally, the car stopped. Christopher got out, opened the back door, and pulled her out like a bag of trash. "This is the perfect spot," he said, looking around. They were in some old industrial district. Empty streets, turned-off streetlights, no one around. "Leave her here. Someone will find her in the morning." He placed Magdalena on the sidewalk, in the snow. The snow was white, clean, beautiful. It was the last thing she saw as she closed her eyes. "Goodbye, Mommy." She heard Christopher's voice, as if from very far away. "I'm sorry it had to end this way." But he didn't sound sad. He sounded relieved. The car drove off. The sound of the engine faded until finally there was only silence. Magdalena lay in the snow, feeling the cold penetrate her body. This was the end. Truly, she was dying. And then, through the fog of pain and exhaustion, she heard something. Footsteps, fast, confident steps approaching her. A voice, male, concerned. "Oh God, hey ma'am, can you hear me?" She felt a touch, warm hands on her face, checking her pulse. She heard another voice on the phone. "I need an ambulance, immediately. Woman about 70 years old, in hypothermic shock. No, wait, don't call emergency services. I'll take her to my clinic. Send a team, now." Someone was lifting her. Someone was carrying her. Someone was speaking to her in a gentle voice. "Please hold on. I'll help you right away. Just hold on." Magdalena opened her eyes. For a moment, just for a brief moment, and saw a face. The face of a man in his 50s, with grey hair and dark eyes full of concern. He wore an elegant coat and smelled of cleanliness. "Who are you?" she whispered. "I'm a doctor," he replied. "And you are safe." Then everything went dark. When Magdalena next woke up, the first thing she felt was warmth. Real, deep warmth that enveloped her body like a blanket. She was lying on something soft, a bed with a real mattress, with clean linen. The room was bright, but the light was gentle, not hurting her eyes. She tried to move, but her body wouldn't obey. Every muscle screamed in pain. She moaned. Immediately she heard movement. Someone approached the bed, the same man she had seen on the sidewalk. "Please, don't try to move," he said gently. "Your body has suffered severe shock. You are in my clinic. You are safe." Magdalena looked at him. Really looked. He was about 50, but his face was tired, as if he had been through a lot. His eyes were dark, intelligent, full of compassion. He wore a white medical coat. "Who are you?" she asked in a whisper. "My name is Dr. Adrian Williams. I'm a surgeon. I found you yesterday morning on the street opposite my clinic. You were in critical condition. Why did you save me?" He looked at her strangely. "Because it's my duty, and because—" He stopped, as if wondering whether to continue. "Because when I saw you, I knew someone had hurt you, and I couldn't ignore it." Magdalena closed her eyes. Tears ran down her cheeks. "Please," she whispered, "please, just kill me. Don't torture me. Just kill me." Silence. Then she felt a touch, the gentle, careful touch of his hand on hers. "Ms. Magdalena," he said softly. "Because that is you, isn't it? Magdalena Smith. I found your ID in your nightgown pocket." She opened her eyes. How did he know her name? "I am not your tormentor," Adrian continued. "I am a doctor, and I swore to do no harm. But I swear something else to you. I will find out who did this to you, and I will not let it ever happen again." Magdalena stared at him, unable to believe what she was hearing. Was it possible? Did someone truly want to help her? "They'll come back," she whispered. "My son, his wife. When they find out I'm alive, they'll come back and they'll kill me." "No one will come for you here," Adrian said with strange certainty. "My clinic is private and well protected. But first we have to heal you. And then, I promise, we will do everything to make sure your story is told." In that moment, for the first time in 3 years, Magdalena felt something she had forgotten existed. She felt hope. For the next 3 days, Magdalena drifted between sleep and wakefulness. Her body was in such bad condition that Adrian had to personally oversee every aspect of her care. He hooked her up to IV drips, providing the fluids and nutrients her body was desperately starved of. He dressed her burns with special ointments. A broken rib that had punctured a lung, he discovered this on an X-ray, required immediate intervention. She nearly lost her life from an infection she didn't even know she had. But Adrian was no ordinary doctor. He was a reconstructive surgeon specializing in victims of violence. He had seen hundreds of abuse cases, but something about Magdalena's story moved him in a way he couldn't explain. Maybe it was because his own wife had died 10 years ago in a car accident he could have prevented if he hadn't been working that night. Maybe it was because he saw in Magdalena someone he could give a second chance to, a chance he hadn't given his beloved. On the first day Magdalena was fully conscious, Adrian asked her to tell him everything. He didn't record, he didn't take notes, he just listened. He listened as she described 3 years in the cellar, as she described every blow, every humiliation, every night she prayed for death. When she finished, Adrian sat in silence for a long moment. Then he said, "I need to examine you. Every inch of your body. I will take photos, I will take X-rays. I will do everything necessary because your body will tell the story your son will try to deny." And he did. For 2 days he documented every wound, every scar, every fracture. He counted the cigarette burns. There were 47. 47 round uniform marks distributed all over her body. The broken forearm that had set at a 30-degree angle. 4 ribs that had been fractured and never properly mended. Scars from cuts on her legs. He discovered that Beatrice had once tried to mark Magdalena with a knife, carving her initials on the inside of her thigh. "People think domestic violence is just bruises," Adrian said, looking at the photos. "But this is torture, systematic, planned torture." Magdalena lay on the bed, wrapped in a warm blanket, and for the first time in years, she felt human. The clinic staff treated her with such tenderness, as if she were made of porcelain. Nurses brought her warm soup, spoke to her gently and smiled. One of them, a young girl named Kathy, brushed her hair every evening, humming a quiet melody. "Ms. Magdalena," Kathy said one evening as she finished brushing, "you have beautiful hair. When you recover completely, we'll dye it, we'll give you a hairstyle. You'll look like a queen." Magdalena smiled for the first time in 3 years. It was a faint, uncertain smile, but it was there. On the 4th day, Adrian came into her room with a serious expression. "We need to talk," he said. "Your son has reported you missing." Magdalena's heart stopped. "What?" Christopher Smith reported to the police that his mother, who suffers from dementia, went missing from home 4 days ago. He says he woke up in the morning and you were gone, that you probably walked out in the night, confused and wandered off. The police are conducting a search. There are reports on TV. Christopher is playing the role of the distraught son, pleading for help to find his mother. Magdalena felt sick. He's on TV? Yes. I saw the interview. He was crying. He talked about how much he loves you and how concerned he is for your safety. "It's a lie," Magdalena whispered. "All of it is a lie." "I know," Adrian said calmly, "but the problem is this. If I go to the police now and tell them you are here, Christopher will use the false medical documents. He will say you have dementia, that your testimony is unreliable, and without solid proof, without witnesses, it could be difficult." Magdalena closed her eyes. Of course, Christopher had planned everything. He was always one step ahead. "So what will you do?" she asked. Adrian looked her straight in the eyes. "I will build a case that is irrefutable. I will hire the best lawyers. I will conduct a full psychiatric evaluation that proves you are in full possession of your mental faculties. I will gather medical testimonies that leave no room for doubt, and then I will reveal the truth in a way that forces the police and the prosecutor's office to act. That will take time," Magdalena said. "Yes, but I guarantee you it will be worth it." She was silent for a moment and then asked, "Why are you doing this? For a stranger?" Adrian smiled sadly. "Because once I didn't do enough to save someone I loved, and I live with that every day. So now, when I have a chance, I won't waste it." In that moment, something in Magdalena broke. For the first time in 3 years, she cried, not out of despair, but out of relief. She cried because someone believed in her, someone was fighting for her, someone looked at her not like a madwoman, but like a human being. On the 5th day, Adrian invited his friend to the clinic. Mark, a former federal agent who now worked as a private investigator. Mark was about 40, tall, muscular, with sharp eyes that seemed to notice everything. "Ms. Magdalena," he said, sitting by her bed, "Dr. Williams told me your story. I want to assure you that we will do everything in our power to hold your son accountable for his actions, but I need your help." "How can I help?" she asked weakly. "I need details, the exact address of the cellar, descriptions of where Christopher hid documents, the names of neighbors who might have known something, everything that could be evidence." Magdalena began to speak. She spoke for hours. She described the cellar, every detail, every corner, every blood stain. She spoke about the writing she had left on the wall, the handcuffs screwed into the pipe, the dirty mattress. She gave the names of the neighbors, the Smiths from the 2nd floor, who used to be her friends, but then stopped answering calls. Mrs. Wilson from the ground floor, who always seemed suspicious of Christopher. Mark noted everything in a small notebook, nodding. "This is enough to start," he said. "I'll need a few days, but I promise I will find the evidence." When he left, Magdalena felt a strange sensation in her chest. It wasn't hope. Hope was too big a word. It was something smaller, more fragile. Possibility. The possibility that justice would be served. On the 7th day, Adrian asked Magdalena to undergo a full psychiatric evaluation. Dr. Kevin Green, a renowned forensic psychiatrist whose testimony often swayed the outcome of trials, came to the clinic. He was an older man with a grey beard and a gentle smile. "Ms. Magdalena," he said, sitting across from her, "I will be asking you questions. Some may seem strange, some may be difficult, but I need you to be honest." For 3 hours, Dr. Green conducted tests. He asked about dates, historical events, and simple math. He showed pictures and asked what they represented. He asked her to draw a clock, to repeat a series of numbers, to tell her story. When he finished, he looked at his notes and said, "Ms. Magdalena, you do not have dementia. Your mind is sharp, clear, and fully functional. What you experienced is post-traumatic stress disorder, which is completely understandable after 3 years of torture, but your cognitive abilities are intact. I will write a report that confirms this." Magdalena closed her eyes and sighed with relief. "Thank you." "Don't thank me," Dr. Green said. "Thank yourself. You survived hell and you are still yourself. That takes extraordinary strength." That evening, Adrian came into her room with a tray of food. It wasn't hospital fare. It was a real dinner. Tomato soup, pork cutlet, potatoes and salad. Everything was warm, fresh, and beautifully served. "I thought you deserved something better than soup through a tube," he said with a smile. Magdalena looked at the food and suddenly couldn't stop the tears. For 3 years she had eaten scraps, sometimes moldy bread, sometimes tap water from the cellar, and now she had a real meal in front of her, served with care. "Don't cry," Adrian said gently, sitting beside her. "Everything will be all right." "How do you know?" she asked through her tears. "Because I won't allow anything else." They ate in silence. Every bite was like a miracle to Magdalena. When she finished, Adrian took the tray and returned with a cup of tea. "Ms. Magdalena," he said, sitting back down, "I want you to know something. Whatever happens in the coming weeks or months, you are not alone. My clinic, my staff, my friends, we are all on your side, and we won't rest until your son is brought to justice." Magdalena looked at him, this stranger who had become her savior, and for the first time in years, she felt something more than just fear. She felt gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know what I would do without you." "Please don't thank me yet," he replied. "We're just getting started." On the 10th day, Mark returned to the clinic with new information. He met with Adrian and Magdalena in a private office. "I managed to get into the cellar," he said without preamble. "Illegally, through a window. But what I found..." He paused, shaking his head. "It's hell on earth." He pulled out his phone and showed them photos. Magdalena looked and shuddered. There was the mattress, dirty, stained, full of the signs of her suffering. There were the handcuffs screwed into the pipe. There, on the wall, was the writing she had scratched with her nails. "It's all still there," Mark said. "Christopher didn't even try to hide the evidence. He's so confident he thinks no one will ever find it." "What now?" Adrian asked. "Now we need official police action," Mark replied. "My photos aren't admissible in court because they were obtained illegally, but they can be the impetus for the police to search the house with a warrant." "And how do we convince them?" Magdalena asked. Mark smiled. "That's what I wanted to talk about." For the next hour, they developed a plan. Adrian had media contacts, an investigative journalist named Anna Novak, who specialized in abuse and corruption cases. Mark suggested presenting the case to Anna first, letting her investigate and write an article. Once public opinion was roused, the police would be forced to act. "It's risky," Adrian said. "Christopher might try to harm Magdalena when he finds out she's alive." "That's true," Mark agreed. "That's why I suggest Magdalena stay here, in hiding, until we're ready for the official reveal. In the meantime, Anna can conduct an interview, but without showing Magdalena's face. We use a pseudonym, distort the voice, only when we have all the legal safeguards." "Do we reveal her identity?" Magdalena listened, feeling her heart beat faster and faster. It was really possible. She could tell her story. She could bring her son to justice. "I agree," she said quietly. "Do it." 3 days later, Anna Novak arrived at the clinic. She was a woman in her 40s, with short dark hair and penetrating eyes. She greeted Magdalena with respect, not pity, which immediately won her heart. "Ms. Magdalena," she said, sitting down, "Dr. Williams told me the outline of your story, but I want to hear it from you, in your own words, and I promise I will treat it with the utmost care." Magdalena began to speak. She spoke for 3 hours, without stopping. She talked about every day in the cellar, every humiliation, every moment she thought she would die. Anna listened in silence, occasionally taking notes, but never interrupting. When Magdalena finished, Anna reached out and gently squeezed her hand. "Your story must be told," she said, "and it will be. I promise you." Anna's article was published a week later. It was on the front page of the largest newspaper in the country, with the headline, "Mother Tortured by Her Own Son, a Story that Will Shock the Nation." In the article, Anna described the case in brutal detail. She did not name Magdalena, but she described every aspect of her torture, every piece of medical evidence, every trace of violence. She included photos of the burns, blurred but still clear enough to show the cruelty, excerpts from the psychiatric report, and Adrian's testimony as a doctor. The effect was immediate. Public opinion exploded. Social media was in an uproar. People demanded justice. The police were forced to make an official statement. They were conducting an investigation. But there was one problem. Christopher, reading the article, immediately issued his own statement. He held a press conference where he cried and said, "These are terrible slanders. My mother is sick. She has dementia. Someone is exploiting her illness to destroy my family." He showed false medical documents. He showed testimonies from neighbors who confirmed that Mrs. Smith did indeed seem confused. He showed photographs from the past in which he embraced his mother, smiling at the camera, looking like a happy family. "This is manipulation," he said with a trembling voice. "Someone is trying to take my mother away from me, and I don't know why." Part of the public wavered. Maybe she was just a confused old woman and someone was exploiting her. Maybe the son was truly innocent. When Magdalena saw the press conference on TV, she felt everything collapsing. Christopher was a superb actor. He always had been. People believed him. "What now?" she asked Adrian, tears streaming down her cheeks. Adrian looked at her with determination. "Now," he said, "we reveal you." The next day, Adrian held his own press conference. He invited all the major media outlets. The conference room of his clinic was filled with journalists, cameras, and flashing lights. On the podium stood Adrian, Anna, and Mark, and next to them, in a wheelchair, sat Magdalena. She was dressed in a simple blue dress that one of the nurses had bought for her. Her hair was washed and styled, but nothing could hide the marks of torture. The burns on her arms, the crookedly set forearm, the emaciation of her body. Adrian began to speak. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I know the media has been full of speculation about the tortured mother case. Today we want to present the truth which is confirmed by medical evidence, witness testimonies, and documentation that leaves no room for doubt." He introduced Magdalena. The cameras started clicking. Journalists leaned forward. "This woman is Magdalena Smith," Adrian said. "For the past 3 years, she was imprisoned and tortured by her own son, Christopher Smith, who wanted to force her to renounce the rights to a tenement building worth 4 million zlotys. Provided details. He showed the medical documentation, X-rays of fractures, photos of burns, the psychiatric report confirming Magdalena's full mental capacity. He presented Mark's testimony, who described what he found in the cellar. And then, most importantly, Adrian asked Magdalena to speak. Initially, her voice trembled. She was scared. But then, slowly, she began to tell her story. She talked about 3 years in the cellar, about every day of hunger, about every night she begged God for death, about how her son extinguished cigarettes on her skin, about how her daughter-in-law laughed at her cries. The room was in absolute silence. Only the clicking of the cameras disturbed her words. Some journalists were crying. When she finished, one of the journalists asked, "Ms. Magdalena, why did your son do this?" Magdalena looked straight into the camera. Because he wanted money, and he thought if no one saw, there was no crime. Another journalist asked, "What do you want to achieve?" "Now?" Magdalena closed her eyes for a moment and then replied, "I want justice, not for myself, but for all the women who are right now locked in cellars, beaten by their own families, and no one believes them. I want the world to know that this is happening, and that it must stop." The room erupted in applause. The effect of the press conference was immediate and devastating. The public no longer had any doubts. Christopher Smith was a monster. The prosecutor's office announced an official investigation. The police, under pressure from the media and the public, obtained a warrant to search the tenement building. The search took place that same evening. The police entered Christopher and Beatrice's home, ignoring their protests. They found the cellar, they found the mattress, they found the handcuffs, they found the writing on the wall. "My son, Christopher Smith, imprisoned me here for 3 years." Christopher and Beatrice were arrested on the spot. But when Magdalena heard the news, she didn't feel triumph. She only felt exhaustion. Exhaustion from 3 years of suffering, exhaustion from the fight, exhaustion from the fact that her own child had become her greatest enemy. That night, lying in the warm bed at Adrian's clinic, Magdalena wept. She wept for the lost family. She wept for the years she would never get back. She wept for the woman she had been 3 years ago. An elegant, strong music teacher who believed the world was good. But in the darkness, she felt a touch. Adrian had entered the room, sat on the chair beside her bed, and gently squeezed her hand. "This is just the beginning," he said quietly. "But at least now the truth is known." Magdalena looked at him through her tears. "What happens next? The trial? Justice? And then," he paused, smiling sadly, "and then we rebuild your life. Together." And in that moment, despite all the pain, all the suffering, Magdalena felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. She felt it was worth having. Survived. The morning was cold and grey when Magdalena left Adrian's clinic for the first time since her rescue. 6 weeks had passed. 6 weeks of intensive rehabilitation, both physical and psychological. Her body was slowly healing. The burns were fading, leaving scars that would never completely disappear. The broken rib had mended correctly, thanks to Adrian's intervention. But her left forearm remained crooked. The bone had set badly long ago, and it was now too fragile to be broken and repaired again. "You'll need this," said Kathy, the young nurse who had become one of Magdalena's closest friends during these weeks. She handed her an elegant navy blue coat. "It's cold outside, and—" She hesitated. "There will be many cameras." Magdalena took the coat with trembling hands. Today, she was going to the police station to give her official statement. It was the first step in the long legal process ahead of her. The prosecutor, a sharp, determined woman named Joanna Miller, had visited her a week earlier to explain what she could expect. "It will be difficult," Prosecutor Miller said, without mincing words. "The defense will try to portray you as pathologically deceptive, as a vengeful mother who invents stories. They will attack your credibility at every turn. Are you ready for that?" Magdalena had nodded then, but now, standing in front of the mirror in her clinic room, looking at her reflection, a thin woman with grey hair and eyes full of suffering, she wondered if she was truly ready. Adrian entered the room carrying a cup of tea. Over these weeks, he had become not only her doctor, but also a friend, a confidant, the only person she completely trusted. "How are you feeling?" he asked, handing her the tea. "Terrified," she answered honestly. "That's natural," he said, sitting beside her. "But you are not alone. I'm going with you. Mark is going. Anna is going. We are all on your side." Magdalena looked at him. at this man who had saved her life and was now giving her the strength to continue the fight. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, not for the first time. "You have a clinic, patients, your own life. Why are you dedicating so much time to me?" Adrian was silent for a moment, as if considering the answer. Then he said softly, "Because when I looked at you that morning in the snow, I saw my wife. Not literally, of course, but I saw someone who needed help, and this time I could do it. This time I could save a life. Will you tell me about your wife sometime?" Magdalena asked gently. "Sometime," he replied with a sad smile, "but not today. Today we focus on you." The police station was a besieged fortress. When Adrian's car, an elegant black Mercedes, pulled up to the building, Magdalena saw the crowd. Journalists, cameras, photojournalists. Everyone shouted her name. Everyone wanted a picture. Everyone wanted a quote. "Ms. Magdalena, how do you feel? Ms. Magdalena, what will you say to your son when you see him? Ms. Magdalena, are you afraid of revenge?" Adrian put his arm around her, shielding her from the cameras, and led her through the crowd. Mark walked ahead, parting the reporters. They finally reached the police station doors, where Prosecutor Miller was waiting. "Good morning, Ms. Magdalena," she said, extending her hand. "I know this is overwhelming, but I promise it will be calmer inside." She led them to a small, sterile interrogation room. There was only a table, a few chairs, and a camera in the corner. Magdalena sat down, feeling her heart pound in her chest like a hammer. "Before we begin," the prosecutor said, "I want you to know that everything you say will be recorded and may be used in the trial. You have the right to an attorney. Dr. Williams mentioned that his foundation has provided you with legal representation." "Yes," Magdalena replied. "Attorney Coleman." "Excellent. Do you want him present during the testimony?" Magdalena thought for a moment. "Attorney Thomas." Coleman, no relation to Anna Novak, the journalist, was the best lawyer for domestic violence cases in the country. He was tall, stern, with silver hair and a voice that sounded like thunder. She had met him a week ago and immediately knew he was the right person to represent her. "No," she said, "I want to do this myself." The prosecutor nodded with approval. "Very well, let's begin." For the next 5 hours, Magdalena told her story. Every detail, every moment, every instance of suffering. The prosecutor asked questions, sometimes difficult, sometimes painful. "Did you ever ask for help?" "Yes, I screamed, but no one heard." "Did you try to escape?" 3 times. Each time he caught me, and each time it was worse." "Can you describe what the torture was like?" Magdalena closed her eyes. He burned me with cigarettes. First he said it was a warning, that if I didn't sign it would get worse. But even when I begged, when I screamed, he didn't stop. And Beatrice laughed. She said I was old and useless, that the world would be better off without me. Did the neighbors know? I don't know. Maybe they heard. But Christopher told everyone I had dementia, that I was hallucinating. So even if they heard, they probably thought it was my illness. When the testimony was over, Magdalena was exhausted. The prosecutor turned off the camera and looked at her with a mixture of compassion and determination. "This will be sufficient," she said. "Your testimony is clear, consistent, and powerful, but I must warn you, the defense will try to dismantle it. They will say you are making things up. They will ask why you didn't escape sooner, why you didn't scream louder, why you didn't tell someone. They will try to make you look guilty." "I know," Magdalena whispered. "I'm prepared." But she wasn't. No one could be prepared for what was coming. The trial was set for April, 2 months after the arrest of Christopher and Beatrice. These 2 months were both a blessing and a curse for Magdalena. On the one hand, she had time to strengthen herself physically and mentally. Adrian provided her with the best care: a physical therapist, a psychologist, a dietitian. Kathy came daily, not just as a nurse, but as a friend, talking to her about trivial things, the weather, TV shows, life, which helped Magdalena feel normal. But on the other hand, time also allowed for doubt. At night, when she lay alone in the darkness, the nightmares returned. She dreamed she was back in the cellar. She dreamed Christopher was standing over her with a cigarette. She dreamed no one believed her words. "It's normal," said the psychologist, Dr. Eva Scott, a young woman with a warm smile and endless patience. "PTSD doesn't disappear immediately. It will be a long road, but every day you will be stronger." "What if I'm not strong enough in court?" Magdalena asked during one of the sessions. "What if I break down? What if Christopher says something that makes me believe maybe I really am crazy?" Dr. Scott leaned forward, looking her straight in the eyes. "Ms. Magdalena, listen closely. You are not crazy. Everything you experienced was real. The scars on your body are real. Your pain is real. And no words from Christopher can change that. When you are in the courtroom, I want you to remember one thing. The truth is on your side." Those words became Magdalena's mantra. When she felt weak, she repeated them in her head. "The truth is on my side." In the meantime, Mark continued his investigation. He didn't stop with what he found in the cellar. He started digging deeper, talking to neighbors, former friends of Christopher, and employees of the casinos where he gambled away money. And what he discovered was even worse than anyone expected. Christopher wasn't just addicted to gambling, he was in debt to dangerous people. Mark tracked down a former business partner of Christopher's, a man named Paul Novak, who agreed to testify in exchange for protection. "Christopher borrowed from the Russians," Paul said, nervously smoking a cigarette in the small cafe where Mark met him. "We're talking about hundreds of thousands of zlotys, maybe even millions. These people don't joke. When you don't pay, they come for you. And Christopher knew that if he didn't pay the debt, he'd end up in a ditch." "So he used his mother?" Mark asked. "Exactly. He knew that tenement building was worth a fortune. He thought if he forced his mother to sell, he'd pay off his debts and still have some left over. But she was stubborn, so..." Paul paused, shaking his head. "Look, I knew Christopher was a jerk, but I didn't think he was a monster. It wasn't until I saw his mother on TV that I understood how far he had gone in his desperation." Mark documented Paul's testimony. It was another important piece of evidence: the motive. Christopher didn't torture his mother out of pure cruelty. He did it out of calculation, out of greed, out of desperation, which in the eyes of the law made him even more guilty. But Mark discovered something else. He talked to a neighbor, Mrs. Wilson, an elderly woman who had lived in the tenement building for 30 years. "I heard screams," she admitted, sitting in her small apartment, surrounded by family photos. "For almost 2 years I heard them. At night mostly, terrifying screams. I thought it was the TV, or that Magdalena was having nightmares. Christopher told me his mother had dementia, that she was hallucinating, so I didn't intervene." "Why are you speaking now?" Mark asked. Mrs. Wilson looked at him with tear-filled eyes. "Because when I saw Magdalena on TV, I realized what I did, or rather, what I didn't do. I could have saved her. I could have called the police. I could have checked myself, but I didn't. And now I have to live with that." Mrs. Wilson's testimony was crucial. It proved that the neighbors heard but didn't act, partly because of Christopher's manipulation, but also because of social indifference. Prosecutor Miller planned to use this testimony to show how Christopher had systematically built the legend of his sick mother to conceal his crimes. The first day of the trial was like a circus. The courtroom was filled to capacity with journalists, activists, and ordinary people who came to see the trial of the century. Outside the courthouse, hundreds of protesters held signs: "Justice for Magdalena," "End domestic violence," "Christopher 2, jail." Magdalena arrived with Adrian, Mark, and attorney Coleman. She was dressed in a simple grey dress. The lawyer advised her not to look too elegant. Let the jurors see a woman who suffered, not someone concerned with fashion or too poor. Let them see dignity, not pity. Her hair was carefully styled by Kathy, who had come specifically to help. "You look beautiful," Kathy whispered, adjusting the collar of the dress. "Strong and dignified." Magdalena smiled faintly. "I don't feel strong." "You don't have to. It's enough that you are here." In the courtroom, Magdalena took a seat next to attorney Coleman. On the other side of the room sat Christopher and Beatrice, each with their own lawyer. Christopher wore an elegant suit, was clean-shaven, and looked like a successful businessman, not a man accused of torture. Beatrice wore a modest, dark dress and looked distraught. When Magdalena looked at them, her heart beat faster. He was there, her son, the man who grew in her womb, whom she fed, whom she loved. And now he sat 20 yards away as her accused. For a moment their eyes met. Christopher looked at her emotionlessly, his eyes cold and empty. There was no remorse, no shame, only calculation. Magdalena looked away, feeling nauseous. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Miller, entered the room. Everyone stood. "Please be seated," the judge said, taking her place behind the high desk. "We are commencing the case against Christopher Smith and Beatrice Smith, accused of unlawful confinement, torture, attempted extortion of property, and other crimes. Prosecutor, please present the case." Prosecutor Miller stood up. For the next hour, she presented the outline of the case. What happened, what the evidence was, what Christopher and Beatrice were accused of. She spoke clearly, without emotion, but with relentless precision. This is not a case of neglect. This is not a case of accidental violence. This is a case of systematic, planned torture of a woman by her own son for one reason: greed. We will prove that Christopher Smith imprisoned his mother for 3 years, tortured her physically and mentally, and tried to force her to renounce the rights to property worth millions. We will prove this through the victim's testimony, medical evidence, witness testimonies, and physical evidence found at the crime scene. When the prosecutor finished, the defense took the floor. Christopher's lawyer, an elegant man named Attorney Paul Green, had a smooth, confident delivery. "This is a tragedy," he began, "a family tragedy destroyed by illness. Magdalena Smith suffers from progressive dementia. This is documented. Her testimony is the result of confusion, hallucinations, and unfortunately manipulation by third parties who are exploiting her condition for their own purposes. Christopher Smith is a good son who dedicated years to caring for his sick mother. That not everything went perfectly is another matter. But calling him a torturer, that is offensive and false." Magdalena listened, feeling the blood boil in her veins. A good son? Care? It was so perverse, so perfectly lied, that she almost would have believed it if she didn't know the truth. The judge nodded. "Thank you to both sides. We will begin with the prosecution's witnesses. Prosecutor, please call your first witness." The prosecution calls Dr. Adrian Williams. Adrian stood up and walked to the witness stand. He took the oath and then sat down. Looking calmly at the room, the prosecutor began asking questions. Adrian described how he found Magdalena, what condition she was in, and what injuries she had. "Dr. Williams, in your opinion, could Ms. Smith's injuries have resulted from neglect or an accident?" "Absolutely not," Adrian replied firmly. "The cigarette burns are distributed in a way that indicates deliberate, systematic infliction of pain. The fractured forearm, which set incorrectly, indicates a lack of medical care for many months. The marks from bindings on her wrists. All of this points to long-term imprisonment and torture. How many cases of violence have you seen in your career?" "Hundreds. I have worked with victims of domestic violence for 20 years. And I can say without hesitation that Ms. Smith's case is one of the most extreme I have ever seen. When it was the defense's turn for cross-examination, Attorney Green approached with a confident smile. "Dr. Williams, are you a psychiatrist?" "No, I am a surgeon." "So you are not qualified to assess Ms. Smith's mental state." "I don't need to be a psychiatrist to assess the physical evidence of torture. But is it not possible that Ms. Smith, in a state of confusion, injured herself? That she burned herself accidentally? That she fell and broke her bones?" Adrian looked at the lawyer with barely concealed contempt. 47 cigarette burns, each in a different stage of healing, meaning they were inflicted over a long period of time. A fracture that was not treated, marks from bindings. No, this was not self-mutilation. This was torture. Attorney Green opened his mouth to reply, but the judge interrupted him. "That's enough. Dr. Williams, thank you. You may step down." For the next 2 weeks, the trial proceeded at a slow, painful pace. Witnesses testified. Mark described what he found in the cellar. Kathy, the nurse, described Magdalena's condition when she arrived at the clinic. Dr. Green, the psychiatrist, presented the report confirming that Magdalena did not have dementia. "Ms. Smith is in full possession of her mental faculties," he said firmly. "Her testimony is coherent, logical, and based on reality. What the defense calls hallucinations are, in fact, memories of traumatic events that actually took place." But the most important testimony was yet to come. Magdalena's own testimony. When the prosecutor called her to the witness stand, the entire room fell silent. Magdalena rose slowly, leaning on Adrian's arm. She walked to the stand, took the oath, and then sat down, feeling hundreds of eyes watching her. The prosecutor approached with a gentle smile. "Ms. Magdalena, I know this is difficult, but please, will you tell us your story?" Magdalena took a deep breath, and she began to speak. She spoke for 3 hours. She told everything, from the first days of manipulation, through the night Christopher locked her in the cellar, to every day of torture, every night of hunger, every moment she prayed for death. Her voice was quiet but firm. She did not cry, she did not scream. She simply spoke the truth. At one point, the prosecutor asked, "Can you show the jurors your injuries?" Magdalena hesitated, but then nodded. She stood up and slowly, with dignity, rolled up the sleeves of her dress, exposing her arms covered in burn scars. The room gasped. One of the jurors covered her mouth with her hand, and another wiped away tears. "These scars," Magdalena said quietly, "are not an accident. They are not a hallucination. They are proof of what my son did to me." When she finished testifying, the defense took the floor. Attorney Green approached with calculated sympathy on his face. "Ms. Magdalena," he began gently, "I understand you went through something traumatic, but is it not possible that some of your memories are distorted, that in a state of confusion—" "No," Magdalena interrupted him firmly. "I remember every day, every hour, every pain. This is not dementia. This is the truth. But your son claims that he was caring." "My son tortured me," Magdalena suddenly shouted, her voice echoing through the room. Everyone froze. "For 3 years I was his prisoner. He burned me with cigarettes. He beat me. He made me beg for food. And you want to say that was care?" Silence. Attorney Green opened his mouth, but he didn't know what to say. "I'm sorry," Magdalena whispered, sitting back down. "I'm sorry for shouting." The judge looked at her with something that resembled respect. "You don't need to apologize, Ms. Smith. Please continue." But Attorney Green had no more questions. The most dramatic moment of the trial came 2 days later, when the prosecutor presented the physical evidence. The mattress from the cellar was brought into the courtroom. Dirty, stained, covered in mold. It was sealed in a plastic cover, but even through the plastic, one could see bloodstains and pieces of ruined fabric. This is where Ms. Smith slept for 3 years, the prosecutor said, pointing to the mattress. Forensics found the victim's blood on it, biological traces, and also remnants of food, mostly moldy bread and spoiled fruit. The jurors watched with disgust. Some looked away. Then the prosecutor showed the handcuffs. This is the tool the defendant used to restrain his mother. We found them screwed into a pipe in the cellar. On the handcuffs are traces of Ms. Smith's DNA and traces of rust mixed with blood. But the most compelling evidence was the photo of the writing on the wall. The prosecutor displayed it on a large screen. My son, Christopher Smith, imprisoned me here for 3 years. This is not dementia, this is torture. These are the last words Ms. Smith scratched with her fingernails on the cellar wall, the prosecutor said. She thought she was dying. She wanted to leave a trace, a testimony of what happened to her. And now, thanks to the courage of Dr. Williams and others, she can speak them herself. The entire room was in absolute silence. Even Attorney Green did not try to challenge this evidence. When it was the defense's turn to present their version, Attorney Green called Magdalena's family doctor, the same one who had once entered suspicion of dementia in her records. The man, Dr. Andrew Taylor, looked very nervous. Dr. Taylor, Attorney Green began, do you remember Ms. Smith as your patient? Yes, I cared for her for 15 years. And did you diagnose her with dementia at some point? I did not diagnose it. I entered suspicion. It was an observation, not a diagnosis. But you suspected she had dementia. Dr. Taylor hesitated. Ms. Smith's son, Christopher, came to me and said his mother was forgetting things, was confused. He showed me a recording where she seemed lost, so I wrote that she required observation. Did you see Ms. Smith personally during that period? No. Christopher said his mother refused to come to the doctor. The prosecutor stood up. Objection. Hearsay. Sustained, the judge said. Dr. Taylor, please answer only based on what you personally observed. Dr. Taylor looked increasingly distressed. I'm sorry. The truth is, I never conducted a full evaluation of Ms. Smith. I trusted her son's words, and now I regret it. Attorney Green quickly ended the questioning, seeing that his witness was doing more harm than good. The defense's next witness was a former neighbor of Christopher's, who testified that Christopher always seemed like a caring son. But during cross-examination, the prosecutor revealed that the witness was in debt to Christopher. He owed him 10,000 zlotys. So you have a financial interest in testifying on his behalf? The prosecutor asked. The witness paled. That has nothing to do with it. Of course it does. One by one, the defense witnesses crumbled under cross-examination. Each had some reason to lie. Money, loyalty, fear. None were convincing. Finally, in the 3rd week of the trial, it was the defendant's turn to testify. First, Beatrice testified. Her lawyer had her play the role of a victim, a woman who was manipulated by her husband. I didn't know what was happening, she cried on the witness stand. Christopher told me his mother was sick, that she needed special care. I was never in the cellar. I didn't know what was going on there. But the prosecutor was merciless. Ms. Beatrice, are you a smoker? Yes. What brand of cigarettes do you smoke? Marlboro. Do you know that the nicotine traces found on Mrs. Smith's burns come from Marlboro cigarettes, and that we found your fingerprints on a cigarette pack in the cellar? Beatrice paled. That must have been a mistake. A mistake? And what about Miss Smith's testimony that you extinguished cigarettes on her skin, that you laughed at her pain? She's lying. She's sick. Then why is your DNA on the handcuffs? Silence. Beatrice had no answer. When it was Christopher's turn, the entire room was tense. Would he testify? Would his lawyer let him speak? Attorney Green advised silence, but Christopher insisted. I want people to hear the truth, he said. And so Christopher Smith took the witness stand. He looked calm and confident, as if he were innocent. Attorney Green started with soft questions. "Mr. Smith, please tell the jurors, do you love your mother?" "Of course I love her," Christopher replied, his voice full of emotion. "She is my mother. I dedicated years to caring for her when she became ill. It was difficult, but I did it out of love. Did you ever hurt your mother?" "Never. I would never do that." "Then how do you explain Ms. Smith's testimony?" Christopher sighed sadly. "My mother is sick. Dementia makes her create false memories. She thinks things that never happened are real. It's not her fault. It's the disease." "And what about the evidence in the cellar?" "Mother sometimes went down there by herself. I told her not to, but she wouldn't listen. Maybe she slept there. Maybe she injured herself there. I don't know. But I never locked her in there." It was a perfect, smooth lie. And for a moment, Magdalena felt fear. What if they believed him? But then Prosecutor Miller stood up for cross-examination, and she started to attack. "Mr. Smith, how much money have you lost in casinos in the last 5 years?" Christopher hesitated. "I don't remember exactly. Was it 1 million? 2 million? "Objection!" Attorney Green shouted. "The question is irrelevant." "It is very relevant," the prosecutor replied. "It shows motive." "Sustained," the judge said. The prosecutor continued. "Is it true that in 2023 you borrowed 200,000 zlotys from Russian criminals?" Christopher sweated. "No, it was something else." "And is it true that your mother's tenement building is worth 4 million zlotys?" "I don't know. I never appraised it." The prosecutor pulled out a document. "But this is an appraisal you commissioned 3 years ago, exactly 1 month, before your mother disappeared from normal life. Coincidence?" Christopher was silent. "Mr. Smith, is it true that you tried to force your mother to sign documents transferring the ownership of the tenement building?" "I wanted to help her. She was too old to manage the property." "Help? By burning her with cigarettes?" "I never did that." "Then how do you explain the 47 burns on her body?" "I don't know. Maybe it was self-mutilation." "Self-mutilation?" The prosecutor raised her voice. "Mr. Smith, do you really expect the jurors to believe that a 78-year-old woman with dementia systematically burned herself with cigarettes for 3 years?" Christopher opened his mouth, but he didn't know what to say. The prosecutor gave him no chance. "Or perhaps the truth is that you tortured your own mother because she refused to give you her property, that you imprisoned her in the cellar, starved her, beat her, burned her, all to break her will." "No!" Christopher screamed, and his mask of composure finally shattered. "It's all lies. She's crazy. You're all being fooled." The room erupted. The judge banged her gavel. "Order!" But the damage was already done. The jurors saw the real Christopher, not the caring son, but a furious, desperate man who had lost control. 4 days later, the jury retired to deliberate. Magdalena, Adrian, Mark, and Attorney Coleman waited in a small room next to the courtroom. Hours passed. No one spoke much. Magdalena held Adrian's hand, feeling her heart beat so fast she thought it would explode. After 6 hours, the jury returned. Everyone took their seats in the room. The judge asked, "Have you reached a verdict?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Please read it." The jury foreman stood up. "In the case of Christopher Smith, accused of unlawful confinement, we find the defendant guilty. In the case of torture, we find the defendant guilty. In the case of attempted extortion of property, we find the defendant guilty." The room erupted in applause. Magdalena closed her eyes and wept, this time tears of relief, tears of justice. "In the case of Beatrice Smith," the foreman continued, "guilty on all counts." Christopher and Beatrice sat motionless, their faces as white as chalk. The judge banged her gavel. "Order! Defendants, please rise. Sentencing will be announced in 1 week." A week later, when the judge announced the sentence, 25 years for Christopher, 12 for Beatrice, Magdalena felt a sense of closure. Justice had triumphed, but the cost was high. That night, at Adrian's clinic, Magdalena sat by the window looking at the city's night sky. Adrian entered quietly, carrying 2 cups of tea. "How are you feeling?" he asked, sitting beside her. "I don't know," she replied honestly. "I should feel happy. Justice has been served, but—" She paused, tears welling up in her eyes. "He was my son. Despite everything he did, he was my child. And now he will spend the rest of his life in prison." Adrian squeezed her hand. "I know it hurts, but you did what was right." "And what now?" she asked. "The trial is over. What am I supposed to do with my life now?" Adrian looked at her, and there was something new in his eyes, something warm, something tender. "You live," he said softly. "You just live, and you are not alone." Magdalena looked at him, and for the first time in months, maybe years, she felt something other than just pain. She felt hope. She felt the possibility of a new beginning. But the story was not over yet. Far from it, because in a dark prison cell, Christopher Smith sat on the cold bunk and thought of revenge. The first months after the trial were like learning to walk again for Magdalena. Not physically, although that also required rehabilitation, but emotionally, psychologically. For 3 years, her world had been limited to the 4 walls of the cellar. Now she suddenly had freedom, safety, a future, and it was terrifying. "It's normal," Dr. Ava Scott said during one of their weekly sessions. "For 3 years, your brain was in survival mode. Now it has to learn to live again. It takes time." Magdalena nodded, but deep down, she felt like a child learning the world from the beginning. Simple things, going to the store, talking to a stranger, even sleeping in the dark, triggered anxiety in her. Sometimes she woke up at night, gasping, convinced she was back in the cellar. Only when she turned on the light and saw Adrian's clinic room, bright, clean, safe, could she breathe again. Adrian was her anchor. Every morning, he came to her room with a cup of tea and a warm smile. Sometimes they talked for hours about everything and nothing, the weather, books, music. Other days, they spent in silence, and Magdalena felt just as comfortable. It was a presence that demanded nothing, judged nothing, simply was. Kathy, the nurse, also became a close friend. She was young, only 28, but she had the wisdom of someone much older. Her mother had been a victim of domestic violence, dying when Kathy was 16. That's why Kathy decided to work at Adrian's clinic, helping women like Magdalena. "You know what I admired most about my mum?" Kathy said one afternoon while brushing Magdalena's hair. "That despite everything she went through, she never lost her goodness. She smiled at strangers, she fed homeless cats, she sang when she washed the dishes, and now I see the same thing in you." "Me?" Magdalena was surprised. "Kathy, I'm not good. I feel anger. I feel bitterness. And yet yesterday I saw you talking to the new patient, that young girl who ran away from her husband. You held her hand. You told her everything would be all right. That is goodness, Ms. Magdalena. Goodness that survived hell." Magdalena didn't answer, but Kathy's words stayed with her. Maybe she was right. Maybe despite everything Christopher did to her, he hadn't killed her soul. In May, 2 months after the trial, Magdalena received the official documents. The tenement building was returned to her. All the false papers Christopher had prepared were annulled. The building was hers again. Attorney Coleman came in person to deliver the news. He sat in the small clinic office where Magdalena spent most of her days and placed the documents on the table. "It's your house," he said with a smile. "You can do whatever you want with it." Magdalena looked at the documents, the deed with her name printed in black letters. For a moment, she felt a rush of joy. She had won. She had recovered what was hers. But then something else came, a memory, the memory of the cellar in that very building, the memory of the screams no one heard. the memory of 3 years of hell in the place that should have been her home. "I can't go back there," she whispered. "Never." Attorney Coleman nodded with understanding. "No one is forcing you. You can sell it or rent it, whatever you want." "I want to sell it," she said firmly. "I don't want a single penny from that place. I want the money to go to something good." "For what?" Magdalena closed her eyes, thinking. And then she knew. She knew exactly what she wanted to do. "I want to start a shelter," she said, "for women like me, women who are beaten, locked up, tortured by their own families. I want to give them a place where they can be safe, where someone will believe them, where they can start over." Attorney Coleman smiled broadly. "That is a beautiful idea, Ms. Magdalena. Beautiful and necessary." The sale of the tenement building took 3 months. A developer bought the building, planning to convert it into luxury apartments. He paid 4,200,000 zlotys, more than anyone expected. Magdalena took all the money and established a foundation. She named it Magdalena's House. Adrian helped her find a suitable building, a large, spacious house in the suburbs of the city with a garden and a high fence for security. It was large enough to accommodate 20 women and their children. Magdalena personally oversaw the renovation, making sure every room was warm, bright, and full of hope. "It won't be a place that looks like an institution," she told the architect. "It will be a home, a real home." And so it was. The walls were painted in soft colors, blues, yellows, pinks. Every room had real beds with clean linen, wardrobes for clothes, and desks for studying. There was a large kitchen where the women could cook together. There was a living room with comfortable sofas where they could watch TV, read books, just be. There was a garden with swings for the children. But the most important thing was that there were no locks on the doors from the outside. The women could leave and enter whenever they wanted. They were not prisoners. They were guests rebuilding their lives. The opening of Magdalena's house took place in September. The media, officials, and activists came. But for Magdalena, the most important moment was when the first woman crossed the threshold, a young girl, perhaps 25, with a bruise under her eye and a child in her arms. "Welcome," Magdalena said, extending her hand. "You are safe here." The girl looked at her and then started to cry. Magdalena embraced her, feeling her own tears run down her cheeks. She knew what this girl felt. She knew what it meant to be terrified, broken, convinced that no one believed you. And now she could give something she herself desperately needed 3 years ago: hope. Over the following months, Magdalena's house filled with women and children. Some came after their husbands tried to kill them. Others fled from sons, brothers, or fathers. Each had her story, each had her scars. But here, in this house, they were together. And together, they were strong. Magdalena spent every day at the shelter. She helped cook, clean, and care for the children. But most importantly, she listened. Every woman who came needed someone to simply listen to her story, and Magdalena did it. Without judging, without interrupting, without saying, "You should have left sooner," or "Why did you allow that?" "It's not about what we should have done," she said one evening to a group of women gathered in the living room. "It's about what we do now. It's about the fact that we survived and that we have the right to a new life." The women nodded, some crying. One of them, an older woman named Sophia, who had been beaten by her husband for 20 years, said, "Ms. Magdalena, you gave us more than a house. You gave us dignity." And it was true, because at Magdalena's house, women were treated like people, not victims. They had therapy, vocational courses, and legal assistance. But above all, they had a community. Other women who understood, who didn't judge, who were on their side. As Magdalena was busy rebuilding the lives of other women, her own life was also changing. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, her relationship with Adrian evolved from friendship into something more. It Wasn't like in the movies. There was no grand declaration of love, no dramatic kiss. It was subtle, quiet, natural. It was in the way Adrian looked at her when she thought he wasn't looking. It was in the way his hand found hers when they sat together. It was in the way her heart beat faster when she heard his footsteps. One evening in October, as they sat in the garden of Magdalena's house watching the sunset, Adrian took her hand and said, "Magdalena, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Have you ever thought about starting over? Not just with this place, but with someone?" Magdalena looked at him and her heart beat faster. "What do you mean?" Adrian hesitated, as if searching for the right words. "I'm 62. I've been a widower for 10 years, and during that time I thought I would never feel anything for anyone again. But then I found you, and everything changed." "Adrian," Magdalena began, but he gently interrupted. "I know it might be too soon. I know you've been through hell, but I want you to know that I admire you, not just for what you survived, but for who you are, for your strength, your kindness, your heart." Magdalena felt tears welling up in her eyes. "I thought I could never trust anyone again, not after what Christopher did to me. I thought my heart was too broken." "Is it?" She looked at him, this man who had saved her life, who had fought for her, who had never asked for anything in return, and she understood that her heart might be broken, but it was not dead. "No," she whispered, "it's not." Adrian smiled, that rare, beautiful smile that made him look 10 years younger. He reached out and gently wiped the tears from her cheek. "That's good," he said, "because I have a broken heart too. Maybe we could be together, two broken people who become whole." And then, for the first time in decades, Magdalena allowed herself something she didn't think she would ever experience again. She allowed herself to love. But their happiness was shadowed by the past. In November, 6 months after the sentence began, Magdalena received a letter from prison, from Christopher. At first, she didn't want to open it. She held the envelope in trembling hands, looking at the familiar handwriting, the same letters that once wrote, "I love you, Mom," on birthday cards. Now, those same letters were on an envelope sent from a prison cell. "You don't have to read it," Adrian said, standing beside her in her clinic room. "You can just burn it." "No," Magdalena said quietly, "I need to know what he wants to say." She opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a single sheet of paper filled with dense handwriting. She began to read. "Mom, I know you probably hate me, and you have the right to, but I need to tell you something I couldn't say in court. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything I did to you, for every day of pain, for every night of fear, for every tear you shed because of me. There is no justification for what I did, none. I know you think I'm a monster, and you're right, I became a monster, but I wasn't always like that. Do you remember when I was a little boy? How we played together in the park, how you taught me to play the piano? That boy is still somewhere inside me, but he was buried under debt, drugs, and desperation. I'm not writing this to ask for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I'm writing because I want you to know that I regret it. Every day, every night, I see your face. I hear your screams, and I live with it. Prison is hell, but it's nothing compared to the hell in my mind, because I know I destroyed the only person who truly loved me. Don't reply to this letter. I don't want to hurt you anymore. I just wanted you to know I regret it. Your son, Christopher." Magdalena finished reading and felt something inside her break. She cried, deeply, painfully, from her gut. Adrian embraced her, holding her tightly as her body shook with sobs. "What does he want from me?" she cried. "Forgiveness. I can't give him that. I can't." "You don't have to," Adrian said gently. "Your anger is justified. Your pain is justified. But he's still my child," she whispered. "Despite everything, he's still my son, and a part of me still loves him. What is wrong with me?" Nothing is wrong with you, Adrian said firmly. You are a mother. A mother's love doesn't die, even when it should. But that doesn't mean you have to forgive him. That doesn't mean you have to answer him. Magdalena did not reply to the letter, but she kept it in her desk drawer, hidden under other papers. Sometimes, on lonely nights, she would take it out and read it again, trying to find something in those words: remorse, truth, anything that could soothe the pain in her heart. But it always ended the same way. She would close the letter back in the drawer and cry for the boy who was once her son, before he became her tormentor. December brought snow and cold, but also warmth of another kind. Adrian invited Magdalena to dinner at his private residence in Konstantin, her first visit to his home since he rescued her. "You don't have to come if you don't feel ready," he said, "but I would like you to see the place where I live, a place that I would like you to consider yours if you ever wish." Magdalena was nervous, but she agreed. They drove together in his car through the snowy streets until they reached the elegant house hidden behind tall trees. "It's beautiful," she said as they got out of the car. "It was lonely," Adrian replied. "For 10 years, it was just me and memories. But now," he looked at her, "now it can be something more." The interior of the house was elegant but warm. It wasn't cold and minimalist, as she might have expected from a wealthy surgeon. It was full of books, pictures, and souvenirs from travels. On the fireplace mantel stood a photo of a young woman, beautiful with dark hair and a smile that lit up the room. "That's my wife," Adrian said, handing Magdalena a glass of wine. "Anna. She died 10 years ago." "Will you tell me about her?" Magdalena asked gently. Adrian sat on the sofa, and Magdalena sat beside him. For an hour, he told her about Anna, how they met, how they fell in love, her laughter, her passions, her kindness, and about the night she died. "She was on her way home after dinner with friends," he said softly. "A drunk driver hit her car. She died instantly, and I was at work, performing a surgery I could have cancelled. I could have been with her that night. I could have driven her home, but I didn't. And since then, I live with the thought that it's my fault." "It wasn't your fault," Magdalena said, squeezing his hand. "It was an accident, a horrible, tragic accident, but not your fault." Adrian looked at her, and there were tears in his eyes. "I know you say that, and my head knows it, but my heart still feels the guilt." "Then we are similar," Magdalena whispered. "We both carry guilt that isn't ours." "Maybe that's why we found each other," Adrian said. "Maybe we needed someone who understands." That evening, after dinner and a long conversation, Adrian led Magdalena to the garden. Snow was falling softly, covering everything with a white blanket. They stood together, looking at the sky, and then Adrian turned to her. "Magdalena," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "I know this might be too soon. I know we both have our scars, our wounds, but life is short. I've seen too much death to wait for the perfect moment. So I will ask now, will you marry me?" Magdalena froze, words she hadn't expected, a question she never dreamed she would hear again at her age. "Adrian," she began, but her voice failed her. "You don't have to answer now," he said quickly, "but I want you to know I love you, not because I saved you, not out of pity. I love you for who you are, for your strength, your kindness, your capacity to love even after all that was done to you. And I want to spend the rest of my life showing you that you are loved, protected, and cherished." Magdalena was crying now, but they were tears of joy. She looked at this man, this extraordinary, wonderful man who entered her life at the darkest moment and brought light. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." Adrian smiled, that wide, beautiful smile, and gently kissed her. It was Magdalena's first kiss since the death of her first husband 10 years ago. And it was sweet, tender, and full of promise. "We'll keep it simple," she said as they separated. A small wedding, just close friends. I don't want a circus. I agree, Adrian said. Just you, me, and the promise of a new beginning. The wedding took place in February in a small church on the outskirts of the city. There were only 10 people: Kathy, Mark, Attorney Coleman, Prosecutor Miller, Dr. Scott, Dr. Green, and a few women from Magdalena's house. Magdalena wore a simple white dress that she had bought with Kathy at a small boutique. She was not a bride in the traditional sense. She was 70, with silver hair and scars on her body. But as she walked to the altar where Adrian waited, she felt like the most beautiful woman in the world. The ceremony was short, but full of emotion. When the priest asked, "Do you take this man to be your husband?" Magdalena answered with full conviction, "I do." And as Adrian placed the ring on her finger, he whispered, "You are my miracle." At the reception, a small dinner at a restaurant, Kathy raised a toast. "To Magdalena and Adrian," she said, lifting her glass. "Two people who showed us all that it is never too late for love, never too late for a new beginning, never too late for happiness." Everyone drank, and Magdalena wept happy tears. For the first time in years, perhaps decades, she felt complete. But happiness always comes with a price. In March, 10 months into his sentence, Magdalena received a phone call. It was the director of the prison where Christopher was serving his sentence. "Ms. Smith?" said the voice on the other end. "I'm calling to inform you that your son, Christopher Smith, was hospitalized last night. He had a severe heart attack." Magdalena's world stopped. "What? How is he?" "He is in critical condition. The doctors are doing everything they can, but the prognosis is not good. He asked about you. He wants to see you." Magdalena closed her eyes, feeling the old wounds reopen. "Where is he?" "At the prison hospital. If you wish to visit him, you can come tomorrow." When she hung up, Adrian entered the room, seeing her pale face. "What happened?" "Christopher," she whispered. "He had a heart attack. He might be dying. He wants to see me." Adrian sat beside her, taking her hand. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know," she said honestly. "A part of me wants to go there. He's still my child, but a part of me can't forgive what he did to me. It's not about forgiveness," Adrian said gently. "It's about closure. If you go, don't go for him. Go for yourself, so you can look to the future without regret." Magdalena thought for a long moment, and then she nodded. "I'll go, but will you come with me?" "Always." The next day, they went to the prison hospital. It was a somber, cold building, surrounded by high walls and barbed wire. A guard led them through a maze of corridors to a small room where Christopher lay. Magdalena was not prepared for what she saw. The man in the bed did not look like her son. He looked like an old man, thin, pale, connected to machines that monitored his heart. His eyes were closed, his breathing shallow. 5 minutes, the guard said. "That's all I can give." Magdalena walked to the bed. Adrian stayed by the door, giving her privacy. She sat on the chair next to Christopher and took his hand. So cold, so weak. "Christopher," she whispered. "It's me, Mom." His eyes opened slowly. He looked at her for a moment as if he wasn't sure if she was real. Then he whispered, "You came." "I came. I thought you would hate me too much to come." "I hate what you did," she said quietly. "But I can't hate you. You are my son." Christopher closed his eyes and tears ran down his cheeks. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I wish I could turn back time. I wish I could be that little boy who loved you again." "Me too," Magdalena whispered. "Me too." They sat in silence for a while, holding hands. Then Christopher said, "I heard about your shelter, about Magdalena's house. It's beautiful. You turned your pain into something good." "I'm trying. And I heard you got married to the doctor who saved you." "Yes. I'm glad," he said. and there was sincerity in his voice. I'm glad you found happiness. You deserve it. After everything I did to you, you deserve all the happiness in the world. Magdalena was crying now. Christopher, why? Why did all this happen? How did my loving son turn into this? Christopher opened his eyes, looking at the ceiling. I don't know. Gambling, drugs, debt. It all turned me into someone I never wanted to be. But it's no excuse. Nothing excuses what I did to you. Was there anything I could have done to save you? She asked. Was there a moment when I could have stopped all this? No, he said firmly. It was my fault, only mine, and I will live with that until the end, he coughed, which will probably come soon. Don't talk like that. Mom, listen, he said, squeezing her hand harder. I don't have much time, so I want you to know, I love you. I always loved you. Even when I hurt you, even when I was a monster, a part of me still loved you. And that is the biggest reason for my torment, that I hurt the person I loved the most. Magdalena couldn't speak. She was crying so hard she couldn't breathe. Adrian walked over and put his hand on her shoulder. Time, the guard said from the door. Magdalena stood up, but Christopher held her hand. Wait, he whispered. One question. Can you forgive me? Not now, but sometime. Magdalena looked at him, at this man who was her son, her tormentor, her greatest love and her greatest pain. And she said the words that were true, even if they hurt. I don't know, but I will try. It was enough. Christopher closed his eyes with something that resembled peace. Thank you, he whispered. That's all I can ask for. Magdalena kissed his forehead, the first time in 3 years, and left. In the corridor, she collapsed into Adrian's arms, crying as she never had before. Christopher Smith died 2 days later. The heart attack was too severe, and his body was too weakened to survive. Magdalena received the call early in the morning. She didn't cry when she heard the news. She simply sat in silence, feeling a strange emptiness. How do you feel? Adrian asked. I don't know, she replied. Do you think I should feel relief? Do you think I should be happy that he's dead? I think you should feel whatever you feel. There is no right way to mourn someone who hurt you. No one came to Christopher's funeral. Beatrice was still in prison. His 2 adult children refused to come, ashamed of what their father had done. There were no friends, no colleagues. There was only Magdalena and Adrian. She stood by the simple, cheap coffin in the municipal cemetery, looking at the box that contained her son's body. There were no flowers. There was no priest. Just her, Adrian, and the cemetery worker who waited to bury the coffin. Do you want to say something? Adrian asked quietly. Magdalena nodded. She walked closer to the coffin and placed her hand on the cold wood. Christopher, she began, her voice trembling. You were my son. I loved you from the moment you were born, and despite everything that happened, a part of me will always love you. But what you did to me, I will never forget it. The scars I carry will never disappear, but I am trying to live. I am trying to be happy, and I hope that wherever you are now, you are also finding peace. She paused for a moment and then added, Goodbye, my son. I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. And with those words, she walked away. Adrian embraced her, and together they left the cemetery. Behind them, the worker began to fill the grave. No one cried. The months following Christopher's death were a time of reflection and healing for Magdalena. She continued working at Magdalena's house, helping an increasing number of women. The shelter became a place of hope, a place where women could come not only for refuge, but for dignity, respect, and a new beginning. Anna, the journalist who originally told Magdalena's story, visited Magdalena's house a year after its opening to write a follow-up article. Ms. Magdalena, she said, sitting in Magdalena's office. When I first wrote about you, I was impressed by your strength. But now, seeing what you have built, I'm impressed by your wisdom. You turned your pain into hope for others. It's not wisdom, Magdalena replied. It's survival. I learned that if you want to survive hell, you have to find a way to give it meaning. And this is my meaning. These women. This place. Anna's article was published and brought even more attention to Magdalena's house. Donations poured in from all over the country. Volunteers offered their help. Other cities began to create similar shelters, modeling them after Magdalena's house. Magdalena became a symbol, not just a victim, but a warrior. She was invited to conferences, television programs, and meetings with lawmakers. Everywhere she went, she spoke about the need to protect women, the need to believe victims, and the need for consequences for perpetrators. I don't want my story to be just about pain, she said during one speech. I want it to be about hope. Because if I could survive, if I could rebuild my life, then every woman can. No one is too broken to heal. No one is too old to start over. 2 years after marrying Adrian, Magdalena sat in the garden of Magdalena's house, watching the children play on the swings. It was a warm May afternoon, and the sun was shining brightly. Kathy sat beside her, sharing sandwiches. You know what the best part is? Kathy said, pointing to the children. That these children are growing up in a home full of love. They won't see violence as something normal. They won't think beating is love. You are changing not only the lives of these women, but the lives of the next generation. Magdalena smiled. That is my hope. At that moment, Adrian entered the garden, carrying a large bag. I have a surprise, he said with a wide smile. What surprise? He opened the bag and pulled out something that made Magdalena gasp. It was a piano, a small, portable, electric piano. I remembered you were a music teacher, Adrian said, and I thought maybe you'd like to teach again. Here, at Magdalena's house, to teach these women and children that beauty still exists in the world. Magdalena touched the keys, feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Music was her first love, even before her husband, before motherhood, before everything. And Christopher had killed it. When he locked her in the cellar, he took not only her freedom, but also her music. Now she had a chance to reclaim it. She sat down at the piano and began to play. Chopin, Nocturnes. Her fingers were stiff and uncertain, but the music flowed, and as she played, something in her broke, the last wall of pain, the last fragment of anger. She cried, but they were tears of relief, tears of healing. When she finished, the children in the garden started clapping. The women came out of the house to listen, and Magdalena, for the first time in decades, felt complete. 5 years after the trial, Magdalena's house celebrated its anniversary. There was a big party in the garden. Hundreds of people came to celebrate. There were women who had lived in the shelter and now had their own homes, their own jobs, their own happy lives. There were donors, volunteers, journalists, and officials. Magdalena, now 75, stood on a small platform to speak. Adrian stood beside her, holding her hand. When Christopher locked me in the cellar 5 years ago, she began, I thought my life was over. I thought I would never see the sun again, never feel love again, never have purpose again. But I was wrong. She looked at the crowd. Because I am here. I am alive. I am happy. I am surrounded by people who love and care about me, and I have a purpose to help other women find what I found. Hope. Magdalena's house is not just a building, it is a symbol that no matter how deep you are in the darkness, there is always a path to the light. It is a symbol that survival is not enough. We deserve to flourish. So thank you. Thank you to everyone who helped make this place a reality. Thank you to the women who had the courage to come here. And thank you to my husband, Adrian, She looked at him with tears in her eyes. Who showed me that it's never too late for love. The crowd erupted in applause. Magdalena smiled, that wide, radiant smile of a woman who survived hell and emerged stronger. That night, when Magdalena and Adrian returned home, they sat together on the terrace, looking at the stars. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't found you that morning?" Adrian asked, quietly. "Sometimes," Magdalena replied, "but then I remind myself that it's not about what if, it's about what is, and what is beautiful." "I agree," he said, kissing her hand. "Adrian?" "Yes? Thank you for everything, for saving my life, for loving me, for giving me a new beginning." "You don't have to thank me," he said. "You saved me just as much as I saved you." And they sat there, holding hands, two broken people who found wholeness in each other, two survivors who became warriors, two hearts that went through darkness and found the light. Epilogue. 10 years later, Magdalena Smith Williams was now 80 years old. Her hair was completely white, but her eyes still shone with the same strength. Magdalena's house had grown to 3 buildings, helping over 1,000 women a year. Magdalena no longer managed the day-to-day operations, a younger team did that. But she came every day to talk to the women, listen to their stories, and share her wisdom. Adrian, 82, still worked as a consultant at his clinic, though much less than before. His true work was being Magdalena's husband, her companion, her best friend. Together they traveled, visiting places Magdalena had dreamed of as a young woman. They saw Paris, Rome, and London. They sat on beaches in Greece, ate gelato in Italy, and danced in the rain in Ireland. They lived. One morning in June, as they sat in their garden, Magdalena said, "Do you think I was a good mother?" Adrian looked at her surprised. "Why do you ask?" "Because for years I thought it was my fault, that I did something wrong raising Christopher. That's why he became a monster." "It wasn't your fault," Adrian said firmly. "Christopher made his own choices. You were a wonderful mother, and the proof is in all those women you helped. You are a mother to hundreds of people now." Magdalena smiled. "Mother Magdalena, that's what some of the women call me, and that is beautiful." They sat in silence for a moment, and then Magdalena said, "You know what's strange? I don't hate him anymore. I don't hate Christopher. I think of him sometimes, and I feel regret. Regret for the boy he could have been, for the life he could have had." "That is forgiveness," Adrian said. "Maybe," Magdalena agreed, "or maybe it's just peace. The understanding that I can't change the past. I can only live in the present." "And are you happy in the present?" Magdalena looked at him, at this man who was her savior, her husband, her friend. She looked at the garden full of flowers and light. She thought of Magdalena's house, of all the women she helped, of all the lives she touched. "Yes," she said with full conviction, "I am happy." And it was true. Magdalena Smith survived hell. She was tortured by her own son. She lost years of her life in darkness and pain, but she did not allow it to destroy her. Instead, she turned her pain into purpose, her agony into hope, her survival into flourishing. She was more than a victim. She was a warrior. She was a healer. She was a symbol of strength, resilience, and the indestructible human spirit. And when she died peacefully in her sleep at the age of 90, surrounded by Adrian and the women she considered her daughters, her last words were, "Thank you for the second chance, for the love, for life." Magdalena's house continued its work long after her death. On the wall of the main hall hung a large photo of Magdalena, not from the time of her ordeal, but from her 80th birthday, smiling, happy, surrounded by love. Beneath the photo was a plaque, "Magdalena Smith Williams, 1955-2045. A victim who became a warrior, a woman who turned darkness into light, a mother to all who needed a home." And every woman who walked through those doors, looking at that photo, knew, if she could survive, if she could flourish, then I can too. Because that was Magdalena's true legacy, not her pain, not her torment, but her hope, her strength, her indestructible belief that everyone deserves love, dignity, and a second chance. And so her story, a story that began in a cellar full of darkness, ended in a garden full of light.